A robbery suspect runs from police and locks himself inside an apartment, and now that man is behind bars after a 2-hour SWAT standoff. Good afternoon, everyone. Police surrounded the Southwest Houston apartment complex early this morning.
Our big story this afternoon, the suspect is behind bars after some tense moments during a SWAT standoff. It took place on Brew near Shepherd in Southwest Houston. That's where News 2 Houston's Ron Stone Jr. joins us live with the very latest. Ron?
Pauline, that suspect was reportedly looking for a car and picked this apartment complex to find one. Bad choice, because a police officer lives at this apartment complex, so it appears today that the robber picked the wrong place to rob. He was captured without shots ever being fired, something of a miracle in a 2-block crime scene where violence was always close at hand.
I called 911 right when I heard my girlfriend scream.
It all began at this small apartment complex on Brun and Vermont, where 2 roommates were robbed and terrorized.
He started taking their purses and their bags, whatever he could find.
No one was hurt, just very scared. I mean, he held one to gunpoint to her head.
But next door to that apartment lives HPD Bike Patrol Officer Eddie Barrientes, and he was just leaving for work.
I heard a lady scream, and it sounded like she really needed some help, so I came downstairs to see what was going on, and next thing I know, I'm chasing a guy down the street.
Down 2 blocks, in fact, before the suspect ducked into Scott Griffin's apartment on McDuffie and Peden.
And then next thing I know, I hear him coming up the stairs saying, you know, help me, you know, I've been robbed. And so, well, you know, please come in.
But in looking out his window, Griffin saw the SWAT officers descending upon the 2-block area, so he ran out of his own apartment unharmed. The suspect was flushed out and finally brought down.
He was trying to run, and the dog caught him, and he was taken into custody.
So SWAT had its suspect, but officers gave all the credit to the man from the bike patrol.
That's good. It's just another day at work.
Not quite just another day at work. Now, Barrientes kept telling me, I don't know what the big deal is. I've made plenty of big-time arrests before, but he finally admitted he'd never made one right outside his front door. We're live in Southwest Houston. I'm Ron Stone Jr.
You're watching ABC 13, Houston's news leader. Live with the entire Eyewitness News team. This is 13 Eyewitness News.
Well, he picked the wrong target. Now a would-be carjacker, suspect that is behind bars. It started this morning in River Oaks and ended with a SWAT standoff. Eyewitness News reporter Stuart Stanley picks up the story.
Witnesses say it started at several River Oaks condominiums between 5:30 and 6 o'clock this morning when this suspect was waiting for the owner of a new car to leave for work. After he confronted that owner, he took her back inside her apartment and began taking other items.
Yes, he was armed. He had a gun. He held them at gunpoint. He'd made them go back into their apartment where he got all their things, purses, and then an off-duty officer that lives next door to us heard the commotion, went over to the apartment.
Luckily, the girl being robbed was dating that officer. He heard the screams and waited outside for the suspect, then began chasing him for 2 blocks without his shoes on to these condos. When the suspect pulled a fast one on the officer and another resident here.
You know, help me, you know, I've been robbed. And so, well, you know, please come in. So he comes in my bedroom and he falls on the floor and he says, oh, I've been robbed, please help me. I said, fine. I grabbed my phone, I dialed 911, handed the phone, said, here, you know, please talk to the police.
Griffin says the suspect then called for a ride from one of his friends. That's when Griffin got word and left by his back door. At that time, the SWAT team was in place, and within an hour, the chase was over.
The security guards on the grounds chased him, and the SWAT officers then chased him along with a canine officer. He was captured inside the apartment project before he could get outside of the project.
Right through that window is where the man in the house code lives. He says he won't let anybody else in his house unless he's got his pistol out. In any event, the suspect faces a multitude of charges, and if not for that police officer chasing him 2 blocks without any shoes on, he would have gotten away clean. Stuart Stanley, 13, Eyewitness News.
SWAT teams turned an apartment complex into a war zone. Several cops and police dogs are called in to track a suspected carjacker holed up in an apartment. Neighbors hear screams from victims and take action.
Yeah, I called 911 right when I heard my girlfriend scream.
Tonight, a dramatic end to a SWAT standoff.
And good evening. Police are calling an off-duty police officer a hero tonight.
Our big story this evening, the SWAT standoff ends with no injuries, but a lot of excitement. It began at an apartment complex in Southwest Houston on Brun at Vermont. News 2 Houston's Ron Stone Jr. is live at the scene now, Ron.
Linda, from this apartment complex, the chase went on about 2 blocks in this direction, all the while in pursuit a lone police officer who went to work this morning as soon as he walked out of his front door. The SWAT team had arrived, weapons on the ready. But the biggest factor in the arrest of this suspect was a bike patrol officer.
It's good. It's just another day at work.
Not quite. Barrientes happened to live next door to 2 women targeted by a would-be carjacker.
He had a gun. He held them at gunpoint. He'd made them go back into their apartment where he got all their things, purses.
But when the suspect left that apartment at Brunn in Vermont, he found unwanted company.
I heard a lady scream, and it sounded like she really needed some help, so I came downstairs to see what was going on, and next thing I know, I'm chasing a guy down the street.
That chase lasted 2 blocks before the suspect ran into an apartment on McDuffie at Peden.
Next thing I know, I hear him coming up the stairs saying, you know, help me, you know, I've been robbed. And I said, well, you know, please come in. He walked to the front door and was peeking out the front window, and right then I heard a knock on the back door, and there was 4 officers out there, so I went out the back door.
By then, the SWAT team was in place, thanks to the valuable time that Officer Barrientes had bought them. For 40 tense minutes, the suspect hid before trying and failing to make a run for it.
The front door was one possible escape. He could have been outside the front door before SWAT set up on it. The other possibility is he went through the attic and came out through some other apartment down the row.
A police dog finally brought the suspect down after a long ordeal that constantly edged toward violence but ended with no one hurt. That suspect has not yet been identified by police. We're live in Southwest Houston. I'm Ron Stone Jr.
You're watching Bill Biessa, Linda Laurel, meteorologist Frank Billingsley's AccuWeather, and Craig Roberts with sports on News 2 Houston at 6 o'clock, where local news comes first.
A SWAT standoff brings 2 hours of terror to apartment dwellers in Southwest Houston. It began about 7 this morning at a complex on Brunn at Vermont in Southwest Houston. A man robbed a unit that turned out to be next door to an off-duty police officer. That officer chased the suspect 2 blocks to another apartment unit as SWAT units then rolled in. After a while, the suspect surrendered peacefully and no one was injured.
Houston police officers stand ready, at guard, guns drawn, while searching for a robbery suspect this morning in the Montrose area. Just moments before, the suspect held up 2 women in this nearby apartment complex. His plan was ruined when a scream was heard by an HPD officer getting ready for work.
Yeah, I was eating my Captain Crunch and heard this and came outside.
After passing by the suspect in a walkway, Officer Barrientes realized this was his man. The suspect then took off running. Barrientes told him to freeze and took off after him in his sock feet.
May you bring my shoes and tell my girlfriend I'm okay?
And he was holding a gun to him the whole time, and they gave him everything. He still pointed the gun towards them. And then our neighbor is a policeman, and he heard all the commotion, and the guy came running out of the apartment, and the policeman said, hey, freeze, and, you know, and stop, and call, and he told us to call 911.
The suspect then went inside an apartment in this complex, telling the owner that he had just been robbed, asking to use the phone.
I heard a knock on the back door, and there was 4 officers out there, so I went out the back door and exited the house right when he was still in there.
SWAT officers were called out, and a brief standoff began. Within an hour, the suspect managed to escape the apartment and then was caught.
The security guards on the grounds chased him, and the SWAT officers then chased him along with a canine officer. He was captured inside the apartment project before he could get outside of the project and is now in custody. He was trying to run, and the dog caught him.